Fellowship of the Law.
Ladies and gentlemen, fantasy enthusiasts, and lovers of Middle-earth lore, welcome to our epic journey through the most formidable dwarven warriors who have ever walked the halls of Stone and Mountain. Before we dive into our exploration, let me set one crucial ground rule. This list is not a ranking. These dwarves will be presented in no particular order, as strength can manifest in many ways. Physical prowess, legendary deeds, magical capabilities, and sheer indomitable spirit. The dwarves of Middle-earth are not mere side characters in the grand tapestry of Tolkien's world. They are crafters, warriors, miners, and legends unto themselves. Forged in the deep mountains, tempered by centuries of conflict and driven by an unbreakable spirit, these beings represent some of the most resilient creatures in all of fantasy literature. When we speak of strength, we must first acknowledge Durin III, a dwarf who represents more than just physical might. As a direct descendant of Durin the Deathless, he embodies the very essence of dwarven resilience. Ruling during the Second Age, Durin III was gifted one of the 7 rings of power by the elven smith Celebrimbor. This ring amplified his natural dwarven traits, increasing his wealth, mining capabilities, and potentially his physical strength. While the rings ultimately proved to be a double-edged sword due to Sauron's corruption, Durin III represents a unique form of strength, the ability to lead, to preserve culture, and to resist dark influences. His strength was not just in muscle, but in spirit. He maintained the dignity of his people during challenging times, protecting the kingdom of Khazad-dûm, Moria, and preserving the ancient traditions of his people. No discussion of dwarven strength could be complete without Thorin Oakenshield. His very epithet speaks to his combat prowess. Oakenshield was earned during a brutal battle where he used an oak branch as a shield after losing his primary defense. Thorin's strength was multifaceted. Physically, he was a formidable warrior who could hold his own against multiple opponents. Strategically, he led the quest to reclaim Erebor, showing mental fortitude that matched his physical capabilities. His leadership during the Battle of the Five Armies demonstrated a strength of character that transcended mere physical power. Perhaps most importantly, Thorin embodied the dwarven trait of unwavering determination. Even when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds, he never surrendered. His strength was in his ability to inspire others, to rally his people, and to fight for a cause larger than himself. If raw combat prowess is your measure of strength, look no further than Dáin Ironfoot. Cousin to Thorin Oakenshield, Dáin was already a legendary warrior before he became king under the mountain. He famously killed Azaghal the Defiler in single combat when he was just 32 years old, a feat that would be impressive for a warrior of any race. During the Battle of the Five Armies, Dáin showcased why he earned the moniker Ironfoot. Leading the dwarven forces, he turned the tide of battle through sheer martial skill and indomitable courage. His combat capabilities were so renowned that he was respected and feared by orcs, elves, and men alike. What makes Dáin particularly interesting is how he combined physical strength with strategic brilliance. He wasn't just a brute force warrior, but a calculated fighter who understood terrain, tactics, and the psychology of combat. While many might underestimate Gimli due to his companionship with Legolas, creating a somewhat comedic dynamic, he was arguably the most prominent dwarf of the Third Age. His strength wasn't just physical, though he certainly possessed that in abundance, but also in his adaptability and open-mindedness. Gimli broke centuries of elven-dwarven tension by forming a deep friendship with Legolas. He fought in the War of the Ring, battling against impossible odds in Helm's Deep, and participating in the siege of Gondor. His axe was legendary and his courage was unquestionable. What truly set Gimli apart was his ability to represent his entire race on the global stage. He showed the world that dwarves were not just isolated mountain dwellers, but complex, heroic beings, capable of great sacrifice and companionship. Moving back to the First Age, we encounter Azaghal, a dwarf whose strength is almost mythical. During the great battles against the dragons, Azaghal proved that dwarves could stand toe-to-toe with some of Middle-earth's most terrifying creatures. In a legendary encounter, Azaghal wounded Glaurung, the first of the fire drakes, so severely that the dragon was forced to retreat. Even more impressively, when mortally wounded by Glaurung, Azaghal summoned enough strength to fatally stab the dragon, ensuring that even in death he would claim victory. This represents a quintessential form of dwarven strength, the ability to fight to the last breath, to turn certain defeat into a form of triumph that would be remembered for generations. Thrór represents a different kind of strength, the strength to endure after total loss. After Smaug's destruction of Erebor, Thrór refused to let his people simply fade away. He maintained hope, led his people through extraordinary hardships, and kept the dream of reclaiming their homeland alive. While his later years were marked by a kind of tragic madness, his earlier life demonstrated remarkable resilience. He preserved dwarven culture, maintained the royal lineage, and instilled in his descendants, particularly Thorin, a sense of purpose and determination. His strength was psychological, the ability to survive displacement, to keep hope alive when all seemed lost, and to transmit cultural memory to future generations. Sometimes strength is about defense, preservation, and protection. Náin II exemplified these qualities during a tumultuous period of dwarven history. As king under the mountain before Smaug's invasion, he represented stability and a protective strength. While we don't have extensive records of his martial prowess, his ability to maintain and protect the prosperous kingdom of Erebor speaks to a different kind of strength. Leadership, wisdom, and the capacity to create and preserve are as important as individual combat skills. Balin might not be the first dwarf one thinks of when considering pure physical strength, but his strength of character and determination were extraordinary. After the reclaiming of Erebor, he led an expedition to retake the ancient dwarven kingdom of Moria. Though this expedition ultimately failed tragically, Balin's courage in attempting to reclaim a lost homeland demonstrated a profound spiritual and emotional strength. He was willing to risk everything to restore dwarven pride and reclaim a historically significant location. Where many might overlook Mîm, he represents a profound and tragic form of dwarven strength, the strength of survival against impossible odds. A member of the last generation of petty dwarves, Mîm embodied resilience in its most raw and uncompromising form. Unlike other dwarves who lived in grand kingdoms or mighty halls, Mîm and his kind were outcasts, smaller and more diminished than their noble counterparts. Rejected by both the other dwarf clans and the broader races of Middle-earth, the petty dwarfs survived through cunning, adaptability, and an unbreakable will to exist. Mîm's most famous narrative comes from the tales of Durin III. When Durin and his companions discovered Mîm's hidden home in Amon Rud, a complex relationship emerged. Mîm demonstrated extraordinary survival skills, negotiating, manipulating, and ultimately betraying Durin to save his own life. His strength was not about martial prowess or grand heroics, but about pure survival. Mîm represented the darker, more complex aspects of dwarven nature, the willingness to do anything to preserve one's own existence. His cunning, his ability to navigate treacherous social landscapes, and his sheer determination to survive made him a unique representation of strength. The tragic arc of Mîm's life, from a member of a dying race to a pivotal character in one of Middle-earth's most complex narratives, showcases that strength is not always noble or heroic. Sometimes it is simply the capacity to endure, to adapt, and to persist when all logical possibilities of survival have disappeared. In place of our theoretical future, dwarf, let us acknowledge one of the most influential and powerful dwarves in Middle-earth history, Telchar of Nogrod. While his strength may not have been primarily martial, his craftsmanship and creative power made him one of the most formidable dwarves to ever live. Telchar was the greatest dwarf smith of the First Age, and perhaps of all time. His strength lay in his ability to create weapons and artifacts of such tremendous power that they shaped the destiny of Middle-earth. Among his legendary creations were Narsil, the sword that would later be reforged into Andúril and used by Aragorn, the dragon helm of Dor-lómin, worn by Túrin Turambar, Angrist, the knife that cut a Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. His strength transcended physical might, representing instead the quintessential dwarven ability to create objects of power that could challenge even the greatest forces of evil. Through his craftsmanship, Telchar demonstrated that true strength sometimes lies in the ability to create rather than destroy, to forge rather than break. As we conclude our exploration of dwarven might, we invite you, our audience, to join the conversation. Who do you believe is the strongest dwarf in Middle-earth? Are there legendary dwarven figures we might have overlooked? How do you define strength when it comes to the dwarven race? If you could add another dwarf to this list, who would it be and why? What qualities beyond physical prowess make a dwarf truly strong? The strength of dwarves in Middle-earth is not a simple measure of muscle or martial skill. It is a complex tapestry woven from determination, cultural preservation, technological brilliance, combat prowess, and an unbreakable spirit. From dragon slayers to kingdom defenders, from ring bearers to exiled princes, dwarves represent a nuanced understanding of strength that goes far beyond the surface. Remember, in the words of Tolkien himself, "Faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens," and no race embodies this sentiment more than the dwarves of Middle-earth. Baruch Hasad, Kasad Aimenu,